When we look at Avatar Legends, the fighting game, it is easy to think it is just another fighting game with a famous cartoon skin. But the truth is that behind this project lies a development history so turbulent that it is nerve-wracking. I am not talking about a common delay or a studio changing its name. I am talking about a game that literally died and was resurrected. In February 2024, Maximum Entertainment announced with full hype a competitive fighting game based on Avatar: The Last Airbender, scheduled for an early access release in 2025. Except the project did not even last a year alive. In the third quarter financial report of 2024, the company confirmed that the game was cancelled, with a loss of around 9 million euros just among abandoned titles, including Avatar, Mudfest, and Project Velos. And that is where Gameplay Group International comes in, a studio that barely existed and was already born with an almost superhero-like mission to rescue cancelled games. Founded by Victor Lugo, who was a lead designer at Iron Galaxy on Killer Instinct, and by Philip Mays, former director at Mighty Kingdom, this crew seems to have looked at Maximum's abandoned project and said, "No, this game is going to exist." What catches my attention is that Gameplay Group did not just pick up Avatar, they also rescued Them's Fightin' Herds and Diesel Legacy, which were other fighting games that Maximum Entertainment left behind or sabotaged. This says a lot about this company's purpose. They are not just publishing games, they are basically adopting projects that others gave up on. The re-announcement happened at the New York Comic Con in 2025, and since then we have seen the game truly come to life. A closed alpha test in December 2025, a subsequent beta, and now a confirmed release for July 23, 2026. It is surreal to think that less than a year ago this game was considered dead, and now it has a Steam page, rollback netcode included, and full crossplay. Another detail that shows Gameplay Group is playing the right game is the price, $29.99. In a market where a new fighting game costs $40 or $50, this right here is a sign of accessibility. And when they delayed the release by 3 weeks in June 2026, it was precisely to add content that was not in the original plan. It was not to fix last-minute bugs, it was to deliver more content. So, when I look at this whole development context, I do not just see an Avatar fighting game, I see a project that survived out of pure stubbornness from those who believe in it. And that, honestly, gives me more hope than if it had been made by an industry giant with an infinite budget. Because when a game is born from a nearly did not happen, those who are developing it tend to put more care into the final result. At least, that is what I am hoping happens here. I am going to say something that, if you are an Avatar fan, you probably felt too when you saw the announcement. When I read that Michael Dante DiMartino and Tim Hedrick were directly involved in the script for this game's original story, something in my head relaxed. It is not a case of a company throwing fans to any random audience and hiring a third-tier writer to make a disposable story. Here are the original creators of the franchise, outlining a narrative that the developer and Paramount confirmed as canon, which means everything we are going to see there counts toward the official universe. What left me most curious is this premise of shaping the destiny of time and space. From what was leaked and what was confirmed, the central story brings characters from The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra interacting in the same setting, and that is not something we saw in the animation. The idea of seeing Aang and Korra on the same battlefield, or characters like Zuko and Zahir crossing paths, has an absurd potential for dramatic moments because they are completely different eras of the world's history, with distinct political and philosophical conflicts. According to the leaks that circulated, the justification for this temporal crossover seems to be a spirit with time manipulation powers, something that, I confess, leaves me a bit divided. On one hand, Avatar's spiritual mythology has always been rich and allowed things like the spirit world in Korra. On the other hand, time travel is a dangerous trope because it can open plot holes that become difficult to close. Still, if DiMartino and Hedrick are supervising, I am willing to trust that they will find a way to make this make sense within the logic we already know. Outside of the main campaign, what I thought was a smart move was the arcade mode with individual stories for each of the 12 playable characters. This reminds me of fighting games from the 90s and early 2000s, where every fight in the arcade had a specific ending that expanded the lore. In this case, we're going to have a personal story for characters like Aang, Korra, Zuko, Katara, Toph, Sokka, Azula, Zahir, and even Avatar Kyoshi. The possibility of seeing a unique conclusion to each character's arc in the context of this temporal event is something that elevates the game above just another licensed fighter. What really makes me hope this works is the issue of canon. The Avatar franchise has a complicated history and expanded material, and seeing the developer position themselves stating that the game's story is official makes me feel like they are not playing around. They are treating this as a legitimate new entry in the timeline, which means every interaction, every dialogue, every choice can have consequences for what we understand about these characters. This is both exciting and scary, because if the execution fails, the frustration will be greater. The cast they chose to tell this story also tells me something. It is not just Aang's crew and Korra's crew. The presence of Kyoshi, who is an avatar from the distant past, and Zahir, who is such a specific villain from Korra's era, suggests that the story will explore different bending styles and perhaps even philosophies of power across eras. I keep imagining how a conversation between Kyoshi, who is known for being brutally pragmatic, and someone like Aang, who seeks nonviolence, will be explored in a cutscene. These generational and ideological tensions are what make Avatar special. Ultimately, I think the story of Avatar Legends has everything to be more than just a mandatory game mode. If they truly deliver a narrative that organically justifies these characters from different eras meeting with the emotional weight and care for the lore that the franchise deserves, we might be looking at one of the best original stories in this universe since Korra ended. The potential is all there, but the pressure is too, because Avatar fans do not forgive disrespect to the canon. Personally, I am optimistic, but cautious until I see the story mode running in front of me. Looking at what has been shown so far, the first thing that stands out is the control structure, which seems to aim directly at the heart of those who already play traditional fighting games, but with an extra layer of mobility. The game uses a 4-button system: light, medium, and heavy attack, and a 4th button called flow. This flow button seems to be the soul of the game, dictating the pace of dodges, quick dashes, and movement options that are essential when talking about benders who need to control the arena space. What I think is brilliant about this flow system is how it tries to translate the fluidity of the original animation into game mechanics. It is not just about hitting, it is about how you move to hit. Using flow along with directional inputs allows you to extend combos or get out of a high-pressure situation, which gives me the feeling that the game will greatly reward those who have a strong neutral game and know how to manage distance. For characters like Aang, who is focused on agility and evasion with airbending, this flow mechanic has the potential to turn the entire screen into a playground if the player is skilled. And speaking of characters, what excites me is seeing that they actually thought about how to translate each one's personality into their ability kit. Azula is the perfect example of this. She has 2 stances, or game modes. In focused mode, she plays tactically, using oil traps that can be ignited and fire magic on the ground to control space in a calculating manner. In Firelord mode, she throws caution to the wind, loses these traps, and focuses on pure aggressiveness and massive damage, while reflecting that mental breakdown moment she has in the cartoon. Another absurd design hit, in my view, was how they handled Sokka. He is not a bender, so it would be weird for him to fight the same way as Zuko or Korra does. The solution was to give him a style focused much more on cancels. He cannot string together normal attacks seamlessly like the others, but he can cancel these moves into flow movement options, which makes him an unpredictable character. He relies on tools like his boomerang, sword, and apparently cactus juice to stay in combat, which demands much more creativity from the player. A point that could be the differentiator for competitive play is the inclusion of support characters, assists. The fact that you have your main fighter but can also choose among 3 supports who help you with unique abilities opens up a giant strategic window. This means that if you have a character that is very good up close but weak from afar, you can pick a support that launches projectiles to cover that weakness. It is the typical mechanic that makes the community test infinite combinations until they find the perfect meta. On the structural and technical side, what sells this game to me as a serious project is the focus on rollback netcode and crossplay. Nowadays, if a fighting game launches without rollback, it dies in 2 months. The fact that the developer prioritized this, along with the ability to play against anyone on any platform, shows that they understand what the FGC demands from a modern game. And the training mode includes visible hitboxes and frame data right out of the gate, which is a luxury that many large companies still ignore. My perception so far is that Gameplay Group is not making a generic licensed little game. The hand-drawn 2D animations, which are said to have over 900 frames per character, look beautiful, but it is under the hood where things shine. If the flow system is as responsive and creative as it seems on paper and in the trailers, and each character's specific mechanics are well balanced, Avatar Legends has everything to be not only a gift for fans of the series, but a legitimately deep and competitive fighting game. The graphics give me a very good sense of identity because they don't try to look like a generic, modern 3D fighting game. The choice of hand-drawn 2D animation makes everything look like it truly belongs to the Avatar universe, and to me, that already counts for a lot. What catches my attention the most is that the characters seem to have been crafted with real care to preserve the expressiveness of the series. The developer itself mentions hand-drawn animation faithful to the roots of The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. And that makes a difference because Avatar has always relied heavily on facial expressions, posture, and fluidity of movement. If this expressiveness is well maintained in the final game, the graphics will function not just as eye candy, but as part of each fighter's personality. I also like the fact that the visuals don't look too clean in a bad way. From what has been shown, there's an artistic direction trying to balance faithfulness to the series with the clarity needed for a fighting game. And this is important because exaggerated effects can ruin screen readability. When I look at the released materials, I get the impression they are trying to make the action look beautiful without turning the match into a visual carnival that's impossible to follow. Another point that strikes me positively is the variety of stages and the promised art gallery. This is usually a sign that the game isn't just concerned with the characters, but with the overall presentation of the Avatar world as a whole. And honestly, I really like it when a fighting game makes the stage feel like part of the spectacle instead of just a soulless background. At the same time, I still have a natural caution with this type of visual style. Highly detailed 2D anime can look beautiful in trailers and screenshots, but it sometimes loses impact if the animation doesn't hold up consistently during actual gameplay. So for now, what I see is a very promising visual project, but one that still depends on how it will behave in continuous motion and in more chaotic combat situations. What gives me confidence is that the game seems to have been designed to run with a lighter and more efficient technical presentation, which pairs well with the choice of hand-drawn 2D. This style not only connects with the franchise's aesthetics, but also helps keep the image clearer during combat. In a fighting game, good graphics matter, but legible graphics matter even more, and here I feel they understood that very well. My opinion is that the graphics are among the project's greatest strengths so far. They seem to respect the source material, give personality to the fighters, and still serve the genre well. I wouldn't say it's the most impressive game in the world in terms of raw technical fidelity, but in style, identity, and visual charm, it has already won me over. If there is one aspect that makes me very optimistic about Avatar Legends the fighting game, it is how the game's performance is being designed to be lightweight and accessible, which is fundamental to the health of any fighting game nowadays. From what I saw of the minimum requirements on Steam, the game asks for only an i5 7500 processor, a GTX 970 graphics card, or equivalent, and a ridiculous 3.6 gigabytes of storage space. This is practically nothing by today's standards and shows a level of optimization focused on ensuring that the largest possible player base can run the game without hardware bottlenecks. This technical lightness is perfectly justified by the game's art direction. They opted for hand-drawn 2D animations, which are visually beautiful and capture the essence of the original animated series very well. Since the game does not use hyper-realistic 3D models with heavy textures or ray tracing lighting, the load on the GPU and CPU is minimized drastically. This is a brilliant design choice, not only aesthetically, but from a performance standpoint. A classic 2D fighting game is inherently easier to optimize to hit a locked 60 frames per second, which is the absolute law for the genre. Speaking of 60 frames per second, the gameplays and alpha tests that took place, including those recorded in 4K, seem to run smooth as butter, without drops or stutters that harm the input window. The fluidity of movement, especially with the flow mechanic that makes characters slide across the arena so dynamically, would be completely ruined if the frame rate were not rock solid. From what the community that had the chance to test it has reported so far, the game holds up very well in this regard. On the online environment front, which is where many fighting games trip and fall, the developer has already confirmed the Holy Grail, proprietary rollback netcode out of the box. This predictive network architecture is essential nowadays. If well implemented, it hides minor latency fluctuations by simulating the opponent's inputs, making an online match with someone in another state, or even in another country, feel like a local match. Without this, the game's longevity would be practically zero, so knowing that the online focus is solid gives me enormous peace of mind. The addition of full crossplay across platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch 2, and PC, complements this online performance. More players in the same matchmaking pool means theoretically better connections, as the system has a larger range of geographically close opponents to pair you with. The fact that the game is light on PC even helps with the consistency of these crossplay matches, since the risk of facing a player on a weak PC running at 20 frames per second and breaking the match synchronization is drastically lower when the minimum requirements are so modest. Of course, not everything can be perfect, and we need to maintain a certain level of skepticism about the visual clarity of magic and moves during frantic combat. With water, earth, fire, and air attacks flying across the screen, there's a natural concern about whether the 2D engine can keep everything discernible without causing a carnival of lights that confuses whoever is playing or watching. This is not strictly FPS, but it is a crucial part of how visual performance affects mechanical gameplay and reaction to inputs. Finally, the fact that Gameplay Group is conducting playtest sessions on Steam, which reached nearly 5,500 simultaneous players in early July 2026, shows that they are stress testing the servers and network infrastructure before the release later this month. When I put together a lightweight engine, hand-drawn visuals that do not weigh down the PC, rollback netcode, and crossplay, the impression is that they focused exactly on what matters, ensuring that the screen does not stutter and that the online works. For a competitive fighting game, that is already more than half the battle won. If you are even slightly into the Avatar franchise or enjoy a well-polished 2D fighting game, buying it on pre-order or right at launch is worth it. Costing $29.99 for the standard version, the title positions itself at a very accessible value for a modern fighting game, especially in a market where many releases in the genre arrive much more expensive. For me, this price already makes the proposition much easier to defend, because it significantly reduces the risk of an impulse purchase. The developers do not seem to want to gouge money from fans by selling empty promises. From what was disclosed, the game will not come out in an incomplete early access state, but rather as a version well-packed with content at launch. The structure includes a canonical story mode, arcade, full training, casual, and ranked modes with rollback netcode and crossplay. For me, seeing a studio deliver this package right away provides enormous reassurance. The pre-order bonus is also a nice attraction, but without breaking the balance of the work. You secure skins like Samurai Appa and exclusive colors for the fighters, as well as the right to vote on which character will enter the Year 1 pass. This type of incentive seems to me more like a treat for those who are already decided than aggressive pressure to push a purchase. Avatar Legends, the fighting game, is clearly designed to embrace two fronts. On one side, it perfectly serves those passionate about the adventures of Aang and Korra. The entire visual aspect, the flow system, and the proposal to tell an unprecedented story make it clear that the developer wants to deliver fan service with its own identity. This helps the game a lot not to look like just a license thrown on top of a generic system. On the other side, and this is the point that impresses me the most, the game also speaks to those who like real fighting games. It does not look like it was made just to mash buttons and see a pretty special move. The depth of movement, the support system, and the rollback netcode show that there is real competitive ambition. Those who enjoy a technical game will find a project here that tries to respect both novices and veterans. Thinking about the available editions, the Deluxe makes more sense for those who already know they will invest time in the game. If you intend to stay in ranked mode, test DLCs, and follow the support for a long time, it becomes a more interesting option. But if the idea is just to try it out first, the standard already seems safe enough to jump in without fear. I think I am going to buy it at launch, not because it looks perfect, but because it looks honest, ambitious, and very conscious of what a fighting game needs to deliver. And honestly, for $29.99, the proposal becomes much easier to recommend.
Secret technique! Soccer style!
Can't lose. Oh.
Learn it!